I fucked a Tengu. By Lisa Fay. Chapter 1. By the time I finished work, the night was already slipping over the city like a dark, velvet blanket, the faintest chill in the air as the sun gave way to twilight. The streets were quieter, the hum of traffic fading into the background, but something felt off, a subtle shift in the atmosphere. As I walked, I could feel the weight of the day on my shoulders, the mundane fatigue of work pushing me forward, each step one closer to the comfort of home. Then, out of nowhere, I felt it, something heavy, rough, and cold was draped over my head. My breath caught in my throat as strong arms wrapped around me from behind, pulling me off the ground effortlessly, lifting me against the tight hold of a stranger. The suddenness of it stole my breath, and I struggled, but the pressure of the arms was relentless, holding me tightly, rendering me immobile. The smell of metal and sweat filled my senses, sharp and overwhelming, and I could barely make sense of my surroundings. Before I could react, my body slammed hard into the cold, unforgiving floor of what I assumed was a van. The impact was jarring, pain shooting through my ribs, the rough surface of the vehicle's floor scraping my skin. My heart was pounding, the shock of the moment making my head spin. My wrists were bound tightly, the rough rope cutting into my skin. I could feel the constant tension on my limbs, each movement more restricted than the last. The engine rumbled beneath me, the vibrations shuddering through the floor and into my bones, every turn and bump only adding to the anxiety creeping up my spine. The journey was long and silent, save for the occasional hum of the wheels on the road and the thud of my heartbeat in my ears. The air was stale, tinged with the scent of something metallic, and the faint scent of something damp and earthy mixed with the cold. I tried to focus, but the bag over my head pressed in on me, blurring my sense of space, distorting my thoughts. I could feel the heat of the stranger's hands on me as they tightened their grip around my body, their presence heavy and suffocating. Finally, the van came to a stop with a shudder, the engine cutting out with a hiss of pressure. Again, I was lifted, this time tossed over a broad shoulder, my body jolting with the movement, the rough fabric of my captor's clothes pressing against me. The scent of leather and sweat enveloped me as he carried me somewhere, the rhythmic sound of his footsteps muted by the haze of the bag over my head. When I was dropped again, the floor beneath me was hard, colder than before, and damp like the stone of a forgotten cellar or an underground crypt. The coolness seeped through the thin fabric of my clothes, sending a shiver through my limbs. I tried to brace myself, instinctively pushing my feet against the ground, but my mind was still foggy with confusion and fear. I crawled, or at least I tried to, but my movements were slow and clumsy, the unfamiliar sounds of chains rattling around me making my breath catch. Every move I made felt trapped in the space around me, confined. The sound of footsteps echoed, approaching me as I pushed myself away from the unfamiliar noises. My body hit a cold wall behind me, its surface smooth and unforgiving, and I froze there, my back pressed against it, helpless. Before I could even process what was happening, two hands grabbed mine, pulling them above my head and binding them tightly, the cold chains biting into my skin. I shuddered as a chain clipped around my neck, the metal wide and suffocating, like a heavy band, its weight pulling against me. My breathing hitched, my pulse racing in panic as another chain was wrapped around my ankle, securing it in place with the sound of another click, final, unyielding. I was immobile, trapped by cold chains that dug into my flesh. Hands, neck, feet, all bound. My body shook with the cold, the chain's unrelenting pressure, and the silence of the room pressing in around me. I tried to kick, tried to thrash against my restraints, but there was no escape. There was only the weight of the chains and the eerie quiet that surrounded me. Then, without warning, a sharp blow landed on my head, so sudden, so forceful, I didn't even have time to react. The pain surged through me in an instant, a blinding pulse that sent my world spinning. A wave of dizziness crashed over me, and I could feel my consciousness slipping away, the darkness pulling me down like an unrelenting tide. Chapter 2. When I came to, the first thing I noticed was the absence of the bag that had once obscured my vision. I blinked into the dim light, my eyes struggling to adjust to the new surroundings, the weight of the moment settling heavily in my chest. I was in a dungeon cell, an oppressive, cold, and claustrophobic space. The air was thick with the smell of damp stone and earth, a moldy, musty scent that clung to the very walls. The stone around me was slick with moisture, beads of condensation trickling down the gray surface like tears. The walls were uneven, jagged in places, and rough to the touch. They seemed to close in on me, their coldness seeping into my bones, as if the very stone itself was trying to swallow me whole. The only light came from a flickering torch mounted on the far wall, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to mock my helplessness. Metal bars stretched across the narrow entrance of the cell, dark and cold, their surfaces covered in rust that added to the sense of decay surrounding me. The faintest sound of dripping water echoed through the silence, the drops landing in some unseen pool below. I glanced down at my wrists, feeling the weight of the metal chains that bound me. They were thick, long, and heavy. The chains were anchored firmly to the wall, unyielding in their hold, making any attempt at freedom seem hopeless. Instinctively, I raised my hands to my neck, my fingers brushing against the cold, wide metal band that encircled it. The band was rough and unforgiving, and as I traced it, I felt a chain protruding from it, snaking out behind me and anchoring into the stone as well. It was a cruel design, meant to ensure that I couldn't move too freely, that I would remain exactly where they wanted me. My feet, too, were bound. Long chains stretched out from my ankles, bolted tightly to the floor. The links were heavy, the metal biting into my skin with every attempt to shift, leaving me just enough slack to shuffle within the confines of the small cell, but no more. I could feel the weight of the chains at my feet, their pull reminding me of my helplessness with each movement. Bound as I was, I felt like I was treated as the most dangerous person alive. But in truth, I could barely lend a hit, even when I tried practicing, yet they had wrapped me in chains as if I were a threat, one that needed to be controlled. The only thing I had ever been dangerous with was my sharp tongue. Yet, that wasn't a weapon of destruction, no, it was only dangerous to me. It got me into trouble time and time again. And now, as I sat in this cell, I couldn't help but wonder, was it my tongue that had brought me here, or was this something more? Something darker? My mind churned with the possibilities, leaving only an unsettling feeling that this was no mere coincidence, that trouble had indeed found me, and perhaps it wasn't the first one. Chapter 3. Noise crackled from deep within the stone walls, a distant murmur that seemed to stir the very air around me. My senses sharpened, straining to catch every sound as footsteps grew louder, the rhythmic pounding of boots against the cold stone floor sending shivers up my spine. I could feel the tension in the air before the figures even appeared, their presence heavy and purposeful. 3 shadows loomed at the cell door, though the third figure remained indistinct, fading into the darkness as the other 2 moved into view. One of them pulled a large, ornate set of keys from his belt, the jangling sound echoing ominously through the silence before he slid the key into the lock with a grating twist. The door creaked open with an unsettling groan, its metal hinges protesting the movement. The 2 figures stepped inside the cell, their footsteps deliberate, the soft scrape of their boots on the damp floor cutting through the stillness. Their uniforms were dark and functional, simple, but with the weight of authority behind them. They moved with the practiced efficiency of guards, their eyes scanning every corner of the cell, as if expecting trouble at any moment. As they parted, making way for the third figure, my breath caught in my throat. There he stood. He was like a vision from some forgotten myth, his presence overwhelming the small, confined space. His short, tousled black hair framed a face that seemed both ethereal and dangerous, its sharp features illuminated by the flickering torchlight. His eyes, dark brown with a warmth that seemed to flicker like embers, locked onto mine, and a chill ran down my spine. His gaze was not just intense, it was almost predatory, as if he saw through me, reading my every thought. His skin was pale, almost luminous against the shadows, and it was as if the darkness itself recoiled before him. The black wings at his back, massive and sweeping, shifted slightly as he moved, each feather a shadow unto itself, a dark cloak of power that stretched out to remind me just how far his reach could go. They were not the wings of a bird, but of something much older, something ancient, each one capable of swallowing the light whole. He was dressed in a ceremonial robe of deep blue, the fabric flowing and almost liquid, its folds decorated with intricate golden patterns that seemed to shimmer in the dim light, catching it like stars scattered across the night sky. The golden designs twisted and turned as if alive, as though the robe itself held secrets within its weave. The hem of his robe fluttered with an unnatural grace, as if it were weightless, defying the gravity of the room. The long, regal sash that wrapped around his waist added to the air of authority, a silent promise of his dominion over the space, and possibly, over me. But it was the aura of danger that clung to him, that whispered around him, that held my attention. His presence was commanding, impossible to ignore. It wasn't just the sheer beauty of him, though he was undeniably beautiful, it was the way everything around him seemed to shift. His very being thrummed with power, with something darker, more dangerous. Even the wings at his back trembled with restrained violence, as if they were ready to unfurl and strike at any moment. And as his gaze met mine, the temperature in the cell seemed to drop, the air thickening with an unspoken threat. He was no mere figure of beauty, there was something wild, almost feral, beneath that perfect exterior. A creature that could as easily destroy as he could mesmerize. My heart raced, my pulse quickening, as I realized just how little control I had in this moment, just how out of my depth I truly was. The silence in the cell was thick, heavy, suffocating, until his voice shattered it with a question that hung in the air like a threat. "Do you know who I am?" His voice was deep, rich, and smooth, with an underlying menace that made my blood run cold. The words weren't just a question, they were a demand, a challenge to acknowledge the truth he wanted to carve into me. I shifted, the chains scraping against the stone floor as I moved, the sound echoing like a warning in the small, dank space. The chains dragged me down, but I lifted my head, defiantly meeting his gaze. I had nothing left to lose. "You're the king of gross," I said, the words slipping from my lips with a bitter edge, my voice raw, laced with sarcasm. The reaction was immediate. In a flash, his hand was on me, slamming across my cheek so hard that the force sent me stumbling sideways. The sound of the slap echoed through the cell, sharp and reverberating, and I barely managed to right myself, my head spinning from the impact. The sting was burning, but I didn't flinch. I spit to the side, the coppery taste lingering on my tongue as I glared up at him, the blood from my split lip staining my teeth. I stood tall despite the agony, wiping the blood from my chin. His fury was palpable, his eyes darkening as his wings ruffled behind him, like an omen of the storm he could unleash. "I am no crow." His voice cracked with barely contained rage, his tone so furious it seemed to vibrate the very air between us. The words were like a whip, slicing through the tense silence. I stood there, watching him closely. Despite his rage, I knew. He was no crow, not by a long shot. He was something darker, something far more dangerous. A Tengu. The legends whispered of them, of their predatory nature, of how they could strike without warning, tearing through their prey with an elegance that belied their savage power. I'd heard the stories, the creatures with the wings of shadows, their eyes burning with the fury of 1,000 storms, their feet swift and deadly, their claws capable of rending flesh from bone. But I didn't let that fear show. Instead, I kept my gaze steady, defiant, even though my body screamed at me to cower. I had to show him that I wouldn't break under his intimidation, even if everything about him screamed danger. The air around us hummed with heat, as if the tension was enough to ignite the very space. His eyes, those dark, burning eyes, never left mine, the anger in them a storm that I could almost feel on my skin. "You're a Tengu," I muttered under my breath, barely more than a whisper. But I knew he heard it. He didn't flinch, didn't acknowledge it, but I saw the slight flare of his nostrils, the tight clench of his jaw. That was enough. He didn't need to confirm it, I already knew. It was in the way he moved, the way his wings seemed to carry a latent violence, the sharpness in his eyes, like a hawk ready to strike. He turned to his men, his voice low but commanding. "Leave us." The words were clipped, each one carrying the weight of an order that could not be questioned. Without hesitation, they complied, their movements sharp and efficient, not a word spoken in protest. Within moments, The door creaked shut behind them, and in the stillness that followed, it was just the two of us left in the small, suffocating confinement of the cell. Chapter 4. The cell seemed to shrink in his presence, the air crackling with tension as his voice cut through the heavy silence. "I am Riven Valen," he declared, his tone commanding and unyielding, each word a weight that settled heavily in the room. "King over these lands, and you, Corina, you are to be my wife." My gaze snapped to him, fire igniting in my chest despite the chains that kept me bound. I refused to cower. "I'm guessing this is the royal treatment then," I spat, pulling at the chains that bit into my wrists for emphasis. The reaction was swift and merciless. His hand struck across my face, the force of the slap jerking my head to the side. Pain flared sharp and hot, and I tasted blood as it seeped from my already wounded lip. But even then, I stood firm, straightening to face him, unyielding despite the sting. "You don't talk back to me," he growled, his voice laced with a dark warning. "Like that will ever happen," I muttered under my breath, too quietly for most to hear, but not him. The back of his hand came next, harder this time, sending me crashing to the cold stone floor. The impact rattled my bones, but I pushed myself up again, rubbing at my bruised cheek. Blood and spit mingled as I spat onto the floor, defiance burning in my gaze. "You will learn to address me," he said, his voice calm but no less threatening. "Yes, Your Highness," I retorted, sarcasm dripping from every syllable. The next slap came with such ferocity that I fell to the floor and stayed there, my body aching, the strength to rise momentarily stolen. He loomed over me, his shadow a suffocating presence. "Without mockery," he said, each word deliberate and edged with menace. I turned my gaze away, unwilling to meet his piercing eyes. The act only enraged him further. He reached down, grasping the chain attached to the collar around my neck. With a single, powerful pull, he yanked me to my knees, dragging me inches from his face. His other hand moved to his robes, drawing out a small knife. My breath caught, the sharp blade glinting in the dim light as he slid it beneath the fabric of my shirt. With one swift motion, the knife sliced through the material, baring my skin. The blade moved lower, cutting through my pants with the same precision, leaving me exposed and vulnerable under his calculating gaze. Throughout it all, he kept a firm hold on the chain, keeping me in place as if daring me to resist. His eyes roamed over me, cold and unyielding, his expression devoid of mercy. There was something predatory in the way he looked at me, a menace that promised he could break me if he chose. With a shove, he sent me sprawling to the floor, the rough stone scraping against my bare skin. I barely had time to steady myself before he loosened his robes, letting them fall open. Beneath them, he was all raw muscle and strength, and quite the length. His dominance was absolute, and though fear clawed at me, my defiance still burned like an ember in my chest, refusing to be snuffed out. He lowers himself beside me, the weight of his presence pressing down like an invisible force. His hand, unexpectedly gentle, trails across my skin, a caress so soft it starkly contradicts the violence that came before. The sensation leaves me frozen, every nerve in my body on edge as his touch travels lower, deliberate and unhurried, until it reaches my most vulnerable place. I turn to him, desperation etched into every line of my face, my eyes pleading as I stammer, "Please don't. I'm..." Before I can finish, his voice cuts through the charged air, low and unyielding. "I know," he says, his fingers tracing slow, maddening circles that seem to toy with both my fear and my resolve, pressing my clit with his thumb. He slides a finger in gently, the movement so deliberate it sends a shiver racing through me. Instinctively, I reach out, my trembling hand covering his, a silent plea for him to stop. My touch is hesitant, almost fragile, but the urgency behind it is undeniable. He looks at me, his voice calm yet chilling as he says, "Nothing will happen. I need you pristine for the ceremony." But as his words hang in the air, I catch the shift in his gaze, a dark flicker of menace and violence, the predator surfacing once more. Before I can react, he moves with swift precision. In an instant, I'm forced onto my stomach, his weight pressing down on me, trapping me beneath him. His hands are rough and unyielding as he grabs and parts my ass, his intent clear. Panic surges through me, and I shout, "No!" His voice cuts through my cry, cold and merciless. "I said nothing will happen to your front," he snarls, his grip tightening. "But I never said anything about your behind. Now learn to listen, or it will only get worse." His words are blade, sharp and cruel, slicing through any illusion of mercy he might have feigned. He parts me open and thrusts himself in with brutal force. A gasp tears from my throat, quickly turning into a scream as he continues to push his full length inside me, each inch an agonizing invasion. His movements are unrelenting, every thrust hard and violent, driving deeper without pause or mercy. The fleeting gentleness he'd shown before is gone, obliterated, leaving behind only raw aggression, something almost feral in its intensity. Riven adjusted his robe with slow, deliberate movements, his expression cold and composed, as if the chaos he had inflicted was nothing more than a routine act. I lay sprawled across the floor, naked and broken, my body bruised and aching in places I didn't even know could hurt. Tears streamed down my face, silent at first, then accompanied by sobs that racked my chest, sharp and unrelenting. I didn't bother to look up, my gaze fixed on the damp stone beneath me. My fingers curled weakly, grasping at nothing, while my body trembled with pain. Through the haze of my tears, I heard his voice cut through the stillness. "You will learn to obey me," he said, his tone devoid of warmth, as if stating an unchangeable fact. Despite the tremor in my body, I raised my head just enough to meet his eyes. Anger flared in my tear-streaked face, defiance breaking through the sobs. My voice was hoarse but steady as I forced out a single word. "No." The simplicity of my refusal, spoken so plainly, seemed to linger in the air between us, heavy with challenge. Without another word, I dropped my gaze back to the floor, my tears falling freely once more. For a moment, he lingered in the doorway, his presence an oppressive weight that refused to dissipate. "I will be back," he said, his voice low and deliberate, each word carrying a silent threat. He paused, letting the silence stretch unbearably before continuing, his tone even colder, "And it will be sooner than you expect." Without any other sound, he turned and left the cell. The heavy clink of the iron door echoed as it slammed shut behind him, and with that, I was alone again, left to the cold, the damp, and the raw ache of my body and spirit. Chapter 5. "I see you didn't bring your guards this time," I say, my tone sharper than intended. "And I see your tongue is still as sharp as ever," he retorts, his gaze narrowing. "And yet," I add, nodding toward the neatly folded fabric in his hands, "you brought me clothes." His lips curve into a faint, humorless smile. "If you behave, perhaps I'll leave them for you." "Even if you do, it's not as if I could wear them," I reply, gesturing to the chains dangling from my wrists and the torn scraps of fabric still clinging to me. Without a word, he reaches into his robes and pulls out a key, letting it dangle tauntingly in the air. "Now," he says, his voice low and commanding, "let's see you behave. Get on your knees." I meet his eyes, defiant, and remain motionless. He takes a step closer, his presence pressing down like a storm about to break. His voice drops, icy and insistent. "Get on your knees." Reluctantly, I sink to the cold, damp floor, my chains clinking softly with the movement. But I do it not for the clothes. My face still throbs from his last strike, and I know I can't endure another. For now, I kneel, not in submission, but in self-preservation. He parts his robes as he steps closer. "Take it in your mouth," he orders, his tone leaving no room for defiance. "How generous of you," I retort, my voice sharp and laced with biting sarcasm before taking his head into my mouth. But he grabs my hair, jerks my head back and shoves it deep in my throat, making me gag. He finishes and leaves just as abruptly as he arrived. The clothes remain neatly folded, untouched, in the same spot where he placed them before roughing me up. "Great. Now he's taunting me," I mutter aloud, though there's no one around to hear, my frustration boiling over into words. My gaze shifts to the clothes, then down at my chains. "Well, at least I can use them as a blanket," I think bitterly, reaching out to grab the perfectly folded stack. As I lift the bundle, Something metallic slips free from the folds, hitting the ground with a sharp cling. A key. A smile creeps across my face. I snatch the key and hurriedly work at the restraints. The cuffs on my wrists are the first to fall, the relief immediate as circulation returns. Next, I fumble with the chains around my ankles until they, too, come loose. Finally, I reach for the collar around my neck. My fingers trace along the cold metal until I find the keyhole. I try to fit the key inside, but it jams, refusing to turn. It doesn't fit. The collar's lock is far more delicate than the bulky key in my hand. Of course, it wouldn't be that easy. Of course, there had to be a catch, I mutter under my breath, tossing the useless key aside. Still, my hands and feet are free, and that's a victory I can't ignore. I turn my attention to the clothes, eager to cover my battered body. Unfolding the fabric, I realize it's not just any clothing, it's a robe, no less majestic than the one he wore. Its fabric is a soft, pale blue, adorned with intricate silver embroidery that glimmers faintly in the dim light. For a moment, I stare at it, wondering why he would leave something so exquisite for me. Then, without hesitation, I slip it on, the smooth material cool against my skin, its weight strangely comforting. Chapter 6. I've lost track of time. With no window to mark the passing hours, all I know is that I've slept intermittently, woken only by the guards bringing food and water at regular intervals. And yet, he hasn't returned. Not that I'm thinking about him. Certainly not that I miss him. My train of thought is abruptly derailed as the door creaks open, and I almost jump to my feet at the sight of him stepping into the dimly lit cellar. A low chuckle escapes his lips. So eager to see me, I take it? I straighten, masking my reaction. I just wanted to thank you, for the clothes. It suits you, he says, and for a moment, his tone catches me off guard. A compliment? From him? As he steps closer, I instinctively avert my gaze, looking to the side and then down at the cold stone floor. His hand cups my face gently, his thumb tracing the line of my jaw with surprising softness. I lift my eyes, meeting his gaze, and what I see unsettles me. There's no malice in his expression, no cruelty lurking in the depths of his dark eyes. Confusion flickers through me as I allow myself to bow my head into his touch, if only briefly. His other hand moves upward, parting his robe slightly. Of course, he wants that again. The thought sends a chill down my spine, and I take a small step backward. For a fleeting moment, his face appears to cloud with something akin to sadness. But then, as he parts his robe further, I see something unexpected, a glint of gold. Dangling from a fine chain around his neck is a delicate golden key. My hand flies to the collar around my neck, fingers brushing the unyielding metal. "Come here," he says, his voice soft but commanding. I hesitate, my body tense, and take only half a step forward, my eyes narrowing suspiciously. "What's the catch?" A bitter laugh escapes him as he closes the distance between us, standing mere inches away. "No catch today," he says quietly. His fingers trace along the edge of the collar, deftly sliding the small key into the lock. With a soft click, the heavy metal restraint falls away, landing on the floor with a dull thud. Before I can react, his arms envelop me, pulling me into a firm embrace. His lips press against mine, unyielding yet oddly tender, leaving me frozen in the moment, caught between the warmth of his touch and the chaos of my own emotions. The embrace doesn't last long. He pulls back, his hands lingering on my shoulders as if reluctant to let go completely. His eyes search mine, their dark depths unreadable, but the softness from before is still there, unsettling and confusing me. "I freed you, didn't I?" he says, his voice quiet but laced with meaning. "You did, thank you," I reply, my voice steady despite the whirl of emotions inside me. "Then perhaps there's hope for you yet," he murmurs, a small, enigmatic smile tugging at the corner of his lips. I frown, not entirely sure what he means. The moment stretches between us, the silence heavy with unspoken tension. He finally steps back, leaving just enough space for me to catch my breath, yet his presence still feels overwhelming, as if he's claimed the air around us. "Say what's on your mind," he prompts, his tone almost daring. "I must ask you." I pause deliberately, watching him, waiting for a sign that I'm allowed to continue. His gaze sharpens, but he nods, granting me permission. "How did you know my name?" His lips curl into a defiant smile, his silence more unsettling than any words he could have spoken. "I never told you my name, and yet you knew it." My voice holds steady, though my heart beats faster as I confront him. He chuckles softly, a sound that feels both amused and predatory. "Do you think you were taken by chance that night? That you just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time? Was I not?" He shakes his head, his expression almost pitying. "Number. I chose you a long time ago. It was only a matter of time before I came to collect what was rightfully mine." The words hang heavy in the air, their weight sinking deep into my chest. "That mark," he continues, his voice quieter but no less commanding, "on the small of your back. I made it when I claimed you as my mate." Mate? The word feels foreign in my mouth, absurd and impossible, but the way he says it brooks no argument. "We will speak more of this later," he says, his tone final, as if the conversation has been concluded. "For now, we must leave. We will be late." "Late for what?" I demand, though my voice comes out softer than I intended. "Dinner." He replies casually, as if the absurdity of the situation is lost on him. He steps to the cell door and unlocks it, the grating sound of the hinges filling the tense silence. With a glance over his shoulder, he motions for me to follow. I hesitate, rooted in place. Once outside, he says, his voice carrying the weight of command, "You will walk behind me. Close, but not too close." I cross my arms, lifting my chin defiantly. "I will do no such thing." His jaw tightens, a flicker of anger flashing across his face. "Need I stain your new clothing with blood to remind you who is king? And once I am your wife, that will make me queen, will it not?" I shoot back, my words bold, my tone sharp. His eyes narrow, but there's something else there, something that isn't anger. Amusement, perhaps, or even a grudging admiration. "It will," he concedes, though his voice is laced with warning. "Then I will walk beside you," I say firmly, "or not at all." A tense silence stretches between us, space filled with defiance and challenge. Finally, he smirks, the anger in his gaze softening, replaced by something more inscrutable. "You'd better keep up then," he says, his tone light but edged with meaning. I step quickly to his side, falling in line with his stride. "Will you offer me your arm?" I ask, the hint of a smirk tugging at my lips. "Don't push it," he replies, but to my surprise, he extends his arm. I take it without hesitation, a small victory, and as I do, I add with a playful edge, "I think you like it when I push it." He glances at me, trying to keep his expression unreadable, but his eyes betray him. They sparkle with a hint of something unspoken, something he won't give voice to. His silence says more than words ever could. Chapter 7. After dinner, I lean towards him, my voice barely above a whisper, trying to decipher the loud cheers and whistles echoing around us. "Why is everyone cheering and whistling?" He smiles, and there's a flicker of mischief dancing in his eyes. "We need to have sex in front of everyone present," he says, gesturing subtly toward the massive crowd surrounding us. My stomach drops, and my breath hitches. Of course, there was a catch. I mutter bitterly, remembering the time I'd asked him if there was one, and he'd assured me there wasn't. "A little one," he says smoothly, almost as if trying to placate me. "Little?" I repeat, my voice trembling with incredulity. "They need to see me take your virginity," he says, his tone calm, matter of fact. "It's part of the ceremony." He adds. The words hit me like a blow. My breathing quickens, shallow and uneven, as the reality of his statement sinks in. It feels as if the floor beneath me is tilting, threatening to swallow me whole. He notices my panic and places a steadying hand on my leg beneath the table. The warmth of his touch grounds me momentarily, though my thoughts are still spinning. I turn to him, my eyes wide with fear and disbelief. He leans closer, his voice a low, intimate whisper meant only for me. "I will be gentle, Karina," he says, his tone surprisingly tender. "I promise you this. But please, please, do as I ask when we're there." He gestures toward the covered platform at the center of the room, where all eyes are now focused. Before I can say another word, he rises from his chair, and the cheers and acclamations grow deafening. His hand extends toward me, an unspoken command as much as an invitation. With a heavy heart and trembling fingers, I take his hand, intertwining my fingers with his. The simple act feels monumental, as if crossing an invisible threshold. As we stand, the covers over the platform are drawn back, unveiling an opulent bed draped in pristine white silk. The sight makes my knees weak, my resolve faltering. Hand in hand, we move toward the platform, the crowd parting like a sea before us, their cheers ringing louder with each step we take. We ascend the few stairs to the platform, standing together beside the massive bed. He releases my hand and turns to address the gathered crowd. "Let you bear witness to my bride's purity," he declares, his voice echoing through the grand hall, each word landing heavily in my ears. When he turns back to me, his expression softens, his hand rising to caress my face. The gesture is almost soothing, but it does little to quell the storm raging inside me. With his free hand, he tugs gently at the clasp of my robe. The fabric loosens and slides over my shoulders, cascading to the floor in a soft rustle. I stand before him, exposed and trembling, my heart pounding against my ribcage. His hands find mine, guiding them to rest on his chest. I follow his lead, unable to resist, as I mirror his previous action, removing his robe. It falls to the ground, pooling alongside mine. For a fleeting moment, his forehead rests against mine. The world blurs and quiets, as if it's just the two of us in that instant. His breath mingles with mine, steadying me as much as it steadies himself. "Lie on the bed," he commands softly. I comply without protest, my movements slow and tentative. He climbs onto the bed beside me, his presence dominating, yet his touch deceptively gentle. His hand starts at my neck, gliding down with an almost reverent precision, tracing the line of my chest, the curve of my stomach, and lower still. A small gasp escapes my lips as his fingers find their way between my legs, a mix of tension and sensation coursing through me. "Part your legs more," he murmurs, his voice a low whisper, warm against my ear as his lips graze my earlobe in a soft nibble. I hesitate for a moment before obeying, shifting my legs further apart. "More," he whispers again, his tone firm but coaxing. I feel his hand increasing its movement and pressing harder on the most sensitive area. He lowers his fingers from my clit and slides to inside. I can't help but moan. He moves on top of me and I can feel his length resting on my leg. This will hurt. I want to say no shit, but I bite my tongue and just nod. He takes his cock into his hand and positions it right at the entrance. My breath quickens. He presses himself forward and I can already feel the burning sensation and the pain to come with it. I grab the sheet to keep from shouting, but as he pushes himself further, I can't contain it anymore and I shriek. With a final move of his hips, he's completely inside me. I scream again at the pain, at the burning sensation I feel between my legs, and the crowd goes quiet. He pulls himself out and reaches for the robes. With the robe in his hand, he gently helps me to my feet, wrapping the cool fabric around my trembling body and securing it tightly. As he dresses, I watch him, feeling a cold emptiness inside. Though my body is covered, I'm still left with an overwhelming sensation of vulnerability. Once he's fully clothed, he turns to the bed with a swift motion, grabbing the sheet and pulling it free from the mattress. In one fluid motion, he spreads it out before him, the crimson stains visible for all to see. The crowd erupts into raucous cheers, whistling and calling out, the noise echoing around the chamber as they revel in the display. He throws the stained fabric into the crowd, a gesture both triumphant and cruel. Then, with surprising strength, he sweeps me into his arms, his wings unfurling. "Hold tight," he murmurs, and before I can fully process the words, we're airborne. My face presses into his chest, the sound of his heartbeat the only constant amidst the rush of wind. His grip tightens around me as we soar higher, the ground becoming a distant blur. Chapter 8. We land on a grand balcony, the floor beneath us solid and cool. He gently lowers me to the edge of a massive bed, its silk sheets shimmering under the soft light. Let me guess, part 2? I say with a teasing smirk, though my words are laced with sarcasm. He looks at me, his expression softening, his voice unexpectedly gentle. Only if you want it. I grab the edge of his robe, pulling him closer, my eyes narrowed in both frustration and amusement. You're a huge jerk. His brow furrows in confusion. I thought I was a complete gentleman. I even flew you here. I shake my head, letting out a small laugh. I wasn't referring to today, although, strange as it was enjoyable. I pause, glancing at the still healing bruise on my lip, the lingering evidence of what came before. I meant before, I add quietly, a flicker of rawness in my tone. He looks at me, his expression softening as he realizes what I meant. Oh. He murmurs, his voice quieter now, filled with something close to regret. Before I can say more, his lips find mine, a silent apology that seems to convey all that words could not. He stands in front of me and he drops his robe to the floor. His already hard cock is straight in my face. Suck it clean. I raise my eyes to meet his. No. Thanks? I say almost as a question. Say that again. Just as my lips form a perfect circle as I mouth the oh and no, he grabs my head with both hands and pushes himself in. He jerks my head back, meeting my gaze as he's fucking my mouth. There's no malice in his eyes, but the aggression. That's who he is. He thrusts deeper in my mouth, finishing in the back of my throat. I start gagging, but he doesn't pull out and I'm forced to swallow or choke. I chose the first. That felt good, he says as he's pulling his cock from my mouth. Guess the gentleness ran dry, I tell him. I could have roughed and fucked you painfully in front of everyone and they wouldn't have cared, yet I chose to go slow on you, and I think I was as gentle as possible, and I also think you should appreciate that, if you ever want it to happen again. I open my mouth to say something but he cuts me off. Ass or pussy? He asks. I throw myself against the soft bed and reply whatever. Take your pick while I'm still feeling generous. I pull myself deeper onto the bed and further away from him, not to escape him but maybe to annoy him. It doesn't matter. You'll inflict pain wherever you will decide to shove it. He climbs onto bed, on top of me, and he opens my robe, revealing my body. He leans to kiss me but I turn my head away and his lips land on my cheek. Garina, he says my name softly and I turn to face him. I feel his hand between my legs and onto my clit pressing hard. He glides his fingers up and down until they find themselves pressing in. I arch myself upwards and he adds a third finger. I moan. He takes his cock in his hand and slides it in. He grabs my legs and throws my knees over his shoulders, pulling me downwards into his lap. I can feel it go deeper inside me and I gasp. He grabs my hips and holds me rooted in place as he thrusts himself rapidly into me. I let out a small cry of pain followed by a moan. He starts slamming his body onto mine even harder and I feel his cock deeper, hitting violently inside. It hurts but it feels so good. My body shivers and tenses. He feels me and he lowers my legs from his shoulders and parts them more as he pulls me closer. He presses his thumb to my clit without decreasing his hip movements and starts to rub it. It sends me over the edge and I moan harder as I come. I feel my pussy twitching and pulsing around his cock, and soon I feel him pulsing as well, oozing inside me and filling me with his cum. As he pulls out, I can feel the liquid pouring out, a mixture of his and my own. His body drops next to mine and he pulls me closer, spooning me from the side. Was that your first? He asks as he kisses my back. I nod, legs still trembling. And yet I wasn't gentle, he adds, teasing but also as a statement. You also weren't that rough, I add. And you always have to talk back, he says, while lowering his hand to the small of my back and then lower, grabbing my ass and gliding his thumb between my cheeks. My body reacts on its own, arching into his touch, pushing my ass against him. What are you doing? I ask. Getting your ass ready, he replies as he plants kisses on the back of my neck. But. He cuts me off, but not sharply. You didn't choose when I asked you. remember. So I decided to pick both. I gasp as I push my ass further upwards. He slides his hand between my cheeks, finding the rim, and he presses 2 fingers in. It hurts. He presses them deeper and adds a third, and my ass tightens around them. I let out a cry. The pain will pass faster if you relax. You try to relax with 3 fingers shoved down your rear, I shout, and he lets out a laugh. Listen to me, Corina, just do as I say. His voice had no ill intent, yet commanding. I relaxed my hold and he is able to move his fingers again inside me. He pulls them out and I can feel my ass as if pulsing, longing for their return. I feel the heat of his cock as it comes closer between my ass, putting pressure on the rim. I tighten reflexively and I hear his voice. Relax your ass or you will be in far greater pain. And I listen. Good, he says as he uses a hand to pull my ass more open. The pressure increases and I feel a painful pop as it goes in. I shriek, but he doesn't stop. Not until it's completely inside. Relax, Corina, for fuck's sake, just stop tightening your ass. It hurts, I say with a huff. It will hurt less if you just do what I say. But it hurts, I repeat myself. I know it hurts, I can fucking feel it myself, my head's about to explode if you continue to squeeze like that. Despite the pain, I let out a laugh and I try to relax my ass. Thank you, he says as he starts moving inside me, growing in intensity. And he was right, the pain subsided and I was starting to enjoy it. I push my ass harder onto his cock and he responds by thrusting more powerful in me. A moan escapes me. If you would have listened from the beginning, you would have enjoyed it much sooner. You had to say it, didn't you? I speak. You're not the only one who likes to have the last word or to talk back, he added. No shit. I barely finish what I have to say as he pushes harder inside, filling me. He pulls out and turns me to face him. He puts a hand on my cheek and smiles, and I can't help but smile back. Rough sex is good, and it can get even better if you will let me show you, if you will listen. And gentle, well, rarely, but it will happen. Better how? I ask, curiosity piqued. You went straight to that, no complaining about the rare part. Interesting. You're avoiding my question. He doesn't respond with words. Instead, his hand clamps firmly around my jawline, tilting my head back with a forceful jerk as his lips crash onto mine with a violent, ravenous intensity. His teeth graze my bottom lip, biting hard enough to draw blood, and as I gasp in pain and surprise, his tongue pushes past my parted lips, invading my mouth with a dominating fervor. His other hand presses firmly against the base of my throat, holding me in place as his movements demand submission. A breathless moan escapes me, unbidden. I exhale, a mixture of defiance and surrender spilling into the air. Just as abruptly, he releases me, his lips parting from mine. Like this, he growls, his voice low and unrelenting. Our eyes lock, and I see the fire raging within his, a consuming blaze of desire and unspoken promises. Something inside me ignites in response. I surge forward, letting instinct take over as my lips collide with his once more, equally hungry and just as demanding. I pour everything into that kiss, my anger, my need, and my rebellion. Never raise your hand against me, ever again, I command, my voice firm but trembling with passion. His expression softens, just a fraction, and he replies with surprising solemnity, that I can promise. Then show me, I whisper, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. Teach me everything. The end.